Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Kering Women in Motion discussion with Dr. Stacy L. Smith and Taraji P. Henson. I'm Angelique Jackson. I'm one of the senior entertainment writers at Variety, and it truly is my pleasure to lead this talk today as we celebrate 10 years of Women in Motion. And just basically, actually, it kind of coincides quite well, because about 10 years ago is when you also transitioned into producing and directing, of course, that first directing being with Empire. When you think of the last 10 years of your career and that evolution, stepping behind the camera, what are you the most proud of about exploring that side of your artistry?
Just how welcoming the business has been for female directors and producers. I mean, a lot of my friends, Regina King, Tasha Smith, they have a very lucrative career actually as directors. I think Regina King and both Tasha Smith are doing more directing than they are acting. And that's quite refreshing, and it's really inspiring me.
And that actually kind of leads to an important question for you, Stacy, too, because you're the one actually getting the data, looking at the research. One of the things that happened in 2024 is we achieved gender parity on screen for women, still lagging behind in directing. But have you seen that sort of same opportunity that Taraji's speaking of, that the business is becoming more welcoming in this decade?
With me, it's always a mixed bag, right? Because I'm going to be a truth teller with the data. And I think we've seen some real advances. You're mentioning last year in 2024, the top 100 films, 54% were centered on girls and women. Amazing. But when you disaggregate, only 13 of those are driven by women of color, right? And only one, a woman of color, 45 years of age or older, right? So that gives you an idea of what might be happening behind the camera. There are far too few women of color given opportunities to lead that top spot, particularly in film. And so overall, we see about 12% globally directing women globally.
That's a whole nother bag.
But when we look at women of color, it's less than 4%. So there's still a lot of work to be done with people who have talent, just like everyone else, which I'll talk a little bit about that later, but they're not given the same access and opportunities. So the directors you mentioned, supporting them, supporting young women of color and making sure they have that same access is crucial, particularly now.
Well, actually, can we talk about young women of color for just one moment? Because you just gave a commencement address at Spelman and really spoke to the young women about resilience. Mm-hmm. Why was that the message that you wanted to share?
I think sometimes when you talk about the African American experience, it's based in trauma, and I think we have such a resilience when it comes to us. That's how we've been able to still be here and accomplish so much, because we lean into that resilience. And I wanted to remind the young women of that, because that's the resistance, your joy. Yes, we all have trauma, but the sun is always going to come out, right? And I just wanted to remind them of that, because they're about to face the world, and they're gonna have some hurdles to overcome. But if they just rely and lean into their resistance, which is that joy, it'll get through a lot of storms.
How did you navigate that in your career? How did you find that resilience within yourself to continue to navigate and make these various strides, create all of these incredible characters?
Well, there was a moment where I really did get discouraged, and I talked about that in the commencement speech as well, and that's when I went away to Bali for a month to reground myself and regroup, because I was just frustrated, and it was making me bitter, and I'm not a bitter person. And I always made a promise to myself that if I ever got there, it was time for me to walk away, because I'm not servicing myself, I'm not servicing the audience, my fans, or the characters that I portray. And so I knew it was time for me to step away, unplug, and ground myself again. And thank God I did that, because I came back refreshed and ready to take it on, but with a new perspective. sometimes in the industry you make it about the trophies and the awards, and that's never what I got into this business for. I got into this industry to affect lives because the arts saved me, a little black girl from the hood in Washington D.C. in the crack epidemic. It was the murder capital of the nation. I'm supposed to be a statistic. I wasn't supposed to make it out, but I did, and I was chosen to for a reason. And so, I knew, I was very clear on why I wanted to do what I want to do, because I know how powerful the arts can be. And so I wanted to get back to that, and stop trying to, chase the things that, I never came into the industry for. I just had to refocus, that's all.
When you came back from that trip, what then kind of grabbed you first? Because these last few years have been pretty incredible. Obviously you've had, more critical acclaim. We last talked when you were playing Suge Avery in The Color Purple. You have another movie coming in just a couple of months with Tyler Perry, Straw. But you also have made big moves in business. You now own your beauty brand outright. That's pretty incredible. So how did your focus change? How did you start to kind of pave that path when you came back from that trip?
I started to focus on building my brands because, I'm in a unique position where I do have an amazing following, and I have my products, I'm talking about, I have TPH hair and body care products that are doing very well, by the way. And I just bought my company. I sound like Cookie. I bought my company back, Lucius. But, and so I started focusing on that, because, it's hard to launch a brand. And I launched that brand during the pandemic, and I went from 7 million to 17 million to 27 million. And so, I was like, so it's not just acting, you know what I mean? I'm grateful that I have that, but the people who follow me also see my brand work that I'm doing. I also partnered with Terlato, and I have a Moscato now. And so I just started focusing on other things that I could be busy with instead of just relying on that check from Hollywood, writing my one-woman show, taking my power back.
I think that's very important. What you were just saying, Stacy, is the big question and kind of concern is, finding the opportunities for Taraji to have a great role. And it seems that we're still fighting that battle from the C-suites on down to have the people to greenlight these projects. What and how are you seeing that makeup change?
Well, I think the one company that's really focusing on talent from all backgrounds is Netflix. Yeah. We're seeing them pick stories that resonate with audiences, and their audiences don't represent only a small fraction of the population. They are from a variety of different genders and backgrounds, right? Part of the LGBTQ plus community. Mm-hmm. People of color. And, Bella Bajaria, to give her a shout out as the chief content officer, she really knows what resonates. Let's think about Lyft that just came out. 128 million streams, which if you were to buy a movie ticket for every one of those streams, that would have been north of $1 billion. Wow. So she understands what drives viewership. And why this is so important in what we're punctuating here is at the initiative, we always look to see how directors are doing intersectionally. And so we look at the top 100 films and we put them into 4 buckets. And the last time we did this, it was across 1,800 movies. You have films by white men, films by white women, films by underrepresented men, and films by underrepresented women. And across the board, the films that do the best in the marketplace are films directed by women of color. I think Bella Bajaria knows this, right? And so the way that we create opportunities is to understand not only the economic realities, the biases, both conscious and unconscious, and then making sure that you have a team that can understand talent. That they're not focusing on identity, they're focusing on talent, because every identity is talented. And so I'm really impressed with what Netflix is doing and what Bella's doing in particular, because you see that in her slate of decision making. And so we need more people in charge that are low in a trait called social dominance. They don't defer to the white male hierarchy, and they make decisions based on amazing storytelling from all groups.
I mean, a nice, easy pivot. Obviously, Straw is coming to you on Netflix.
That's right.
And that film is also an opportunity to be led by 3 strong women, you, Tiana Taylor, and Sherry Shepard. That opportunity to kind of be at the forefront. I mean, you also took part in a documentary recently, #1 on the call sheet. What has it been like to continue to have that top spot? You know, to be able to, but not only have that top spot, but to do it in situations where there's other women around you. How have you found projects like Straw being so female focused?
Well, you know, Hidden Figures is like one of
Amazing.
And thank you. Yeah, total
Donna
game
Gigliotti.
changer. And you know, I'm a girl's girl. You know, I feel like as women, we are more powerful when we stick together. And I remember Octavia thanking me for making the press run about the 3 of us instead of just about me. And I just wouldn't see it any other way, because I remember when Katherine Johnson was still alive, may she rest in peace, and I went to meet her, and I'm talking to her, and everything she kept saying was we. This is what we did. She never said I. She never made it about herself. And to continue her legacy, like, I would be so wrong if I had made that whole press run just about me. Yes, Catherine was the star of the film, but there was no Catherine without the other 2 women, you know. But that's just how I am, you know. I don't see it any other way. And like I said, we're just more powerful together. When you see the film Straw, the world could have tossed that Janiyah, my character, away like a piece of trash, but it was 2 women who actually saw her, you know. And you're talking about a woman who did not feel seen or heard. And finally, when she finds herself, you know, against every obstacle, is like that day you go, what else can happen? Well, never ask that question, because everything happens to her in this one day. There are 2 women that actually see her and see her struggle and care about, you know, what she's been through. So I love that. I'm all about messaging like that. Yeah.
I would ask what attracted you to that character, but I feel like that seems like a pretty obvious question. One, because obviously having a complex woman to play is important, and then also because you have this ongoing relationship with Mr. Tyler Perry, who has been critical in your development. For some folks here who maybe don't know that pivot, it was partially financially.
Yeah.
He was a big part of helping you raise that quote, which is very important.
He continues to do that, even with Straw. So I urge you all to speak up for yourselves, because it works.
Well, how did you learn how to do that? Because that is something I think a lot of women struggle with.
Well, once I realized the power that I have, you know, I have worked my butt off to garner the following that I have, and my following rides for me. And so that's an audience that I procured, you know, through my hard work and efforts and all the characters that I played, and they follow me wherever I go. And I know that a studio, when they call on me, they're calling on me because they know I have all of these people gonna come to show up, you know, whether it's streaming, whether it's in the theater. So that's my power. Like, you need me because you need my following. You know, and thank you, social media. So once I figured that out, you know, I was like, yeah, I just started speaking up for myself. And my grandmother, I mean, it's just as simple as this. She said, the squeaky wheel gets fixed. So, I mean, that's simple enough. If you stay quiet, your mouth won't get fed. Open your mouth and say, I'm hungry, you'll get fed, you know?
I think I remember you mentioning too, you mentioned the social media being an important factor in that following, but also globally. Mm-hmm. Where was it that you traveled to that you remember realizing, Wow,
It was during the press of Empire. You know, my entire career, I would always act like I'm 30 years in the game, guys, and this is the first time I'm at the Cannes Film Festival. The first time, though. You know, I should have been here years ago, but here I am. Everything happens for a reason. But when I did the international press for Empire, I remember, because, excuse me, up until then, I was told black doesn't translate overseas. I'm like, really? I see Asian people wearing afros, but okay. So we went to Paris, and Lee Daniels kept me a secret to the audience. They did a Q&A. They started asking the cookie questions because we showed them the pilot and the second episode. The audience, of course, started asking cookie questions, and he said, I don't know, why don't you ask her? And before he could finish saying my name, we're talking 1,500 seats, standing room only. The entire room erupted in applause, like screaming. And I was like, for me? And I got up on the stage and I just started ugly face crying because the myth was busted. Like, you lied to me my entire career. And then I leave the stage, I go outside, and there are actual fans outside with jackets, the CD jackets, to other movies, calling me, Taraji, can you sign here, please, please? And I'm like, they know my name. They're not calling me Cookie. They know my name. And so that, for me, changed the game as well. So I came back to Hollywood like, things are gonna change around here.
I feel like you said something very important there. They lied to me.
Yeah.
Because that is, Stacy, go for it.
Okay, so let's just set the record straight here. They did. And there's two things that I think are really important. One is, in my classes, I always say to them, who's the most successful director in Hollywood? And you could probably think top of mind, Spielberg, right? Lucas, all fill in the blank. Very similar profile. It's actually Tyler Perry. Mm-hmm. He works more, right, than any other director. And now in streaming, we're going to see the same thing. So that's the first reality. The second reality is we did the largest and most sophisticated economic analysis to test what Taraji just said, right? What travels internationally, what sells. And when you control for production, distribution, and exhibition factors, there's two things that are really unbelievable. One is that films by women and men make about the same amount of money. But the film that makes the most money, controlling for all the factors, is a film led by a person of color with a cast of color. That is what economically and globally makes the most money. So the fact that so many talented people were given this lie, and sales agents and managers and distributors were not telling the truth, we lost so many stories and so many actors because of that dishonesty. And so you having that experience is not only incredible and invalidating, but it's the reality of these companies that have to make their shareholders happy. So that is what we know sells. And I'm sure that with Gen Z, those trends will become stronger with time.
And just to let you know, like when we first did Empire, they didn't sell it globally. You know what? Right. You know what got it sold globally? The fans. Yeah. They found it on the internet and they started downloading it illegally. And then that's when Fox was like, wait a minute, right. There's money over there? Right. And so that's how that show was sold globally. Yeah. So it was thank God for the fans. Yeah.
And thanks God for the punctuation on that.
They're still over there cheering for Empire. Well, then, as you continue forward, as you are writing your one-woman show, kind of with this knowledge now that you have this audience, that people will follow you, how is that impacting your creativity? How are you then more empowered to tell those stories that have been lost?
For me, it's the freedom. It's the freedom of doing what I want to do and not being controlled by the industry or the machine. Like, when I go to Broadway, they're gonna see, again, I'm gonna bring the numbers because that's what I do. And it's not, I'm not, being conceited or anything like that, but I've worked hard. And I've been graceful in getting paid less than, not anymore though, but getting, and people see that, and they trust that if I pay to go see a Taraji P. Henson movie, she's going to make me feel all the feels. And I have that trust with my audience. People are out here fighting for their lives. Prices are going crazy. We got all these tariffs everywhere. And so for someone to leave their house, think about buying tickets for family members or friends, parking, popcorn, that's a lot. And if I feel like I'm not gonna be entertained, I'm stay home and wait for it to come on streaming. But I want people, I love people. And I want people to come out and connect with my characters. I want them to see themselves or somebody in their family in the characters that I portray. And hopefully it touches them or give them some kind of cathartic feeling, or some nostalgia or something. We need to feel something. This world seems like it's going crazy,
Can I ask you real quick, Broadway, are we finally ready to go?
Oh yeah, Broadway has always been trying to get me there. But for me, it's always about the timing. Yeah, so it's a ways off, but I will be there. No worries.
I'm just asking on behalf of the community. We're still like you said, chasing you.
I'm going to Broadway the way I want to go, though. And it's telling my story, because I think my fans deserve it.
I know you have told your story in other ways. You, of course, are an author. What is it about your story that you want to translate this time?
It's literally about the things that people don't get to see. Like, you get to see, like now I have the makeup and the hair on, and I'm the Taraji that made it, but what got me here? And that's the stuff really, that people don't get to see. And it's literally, I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's just a beautiful journey about how I became Taraji, the legend and the icon. That's what you guys call me.
Well, listen, because yes.
Thank you.
Because we do. We know a bit about that journey. We know that you came to Hollywood with a dream and a light bank account.
And a kid.
And
$700 in my pocket.
And you've made it to this point where you are, a Golden Globe winner, an Academy Award nominee, an Emmy nominee, as we already said, a producer, a director. I would love to hear also about behind the camera a little bit. How you found that empowering, both in, telling stories as a producer, getting other people opportunities, and then also just getting behind the camera and directing your talent.
Well, I'm a people person, so I really love discovering new talent. That's a joy of mine. I probably would have been an amazing casting director. But, so...
Still can be if you want.
Well, it's also in a position of picking and choosing, projects, to tell, because sometimes we get in this thing of, let's remake this, and it's like... We have a lot of beautiful original stories out here. Why don't we tell those? So that's something that is dear to me. Telling original stories because they sell. Sinners, hello. I mean, and so that was a main reason why I wanted to become a producer, and directing. I kind of ran from that, but. The producers on Empire would see how I would work as an actor, and they would be like, you would make a great director. And I kind of felt that when I was in college studying, acting. I have an eye, but, oh, please, hello. Was it something I said?
They said, don't run from directing, I guess.
No, but, so it is. We're up here talking about women, and we a really good conversation, but it's okay. That's purification, actually. But it was the producers on Empire that kind of coerced me and pushed me to direct, and I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna try it out, this is great. I'm on a show. I might as well do it now. But I kind of like directing. The only thing about it for me is that it takes so much out of my year. Like, to direct a film, you literally are off the market for an entire year. So then the actor in me is like, well, what about that role? I missed out on that, you know. I literally look to my girlfriends Tasha and Tasha Smith and Regina King, because they literally have mastered it.
Well, I was going to ask about more feature directing. Do you
Yeah.
have the desire anytime soon?
I do. It's just, for me, it's about what project. I'm always about why me, why now. So if I can't answer that, then it's not for me yet. You know what I mean? Because I could do it just to do it, but if I don't have a story, if there's nothing organic, then that's probably not for me.
Well, I know one of the things that is inspiring you right now and has been a very important focus for you is your foundation.
Yes.
The Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, named for your late father, because there has been such an emphasis on mental health and mental health awareness. Why has that been so important for you to discuss? And honestly, probably how meaningful it's been to hear from audiences about focusing on it.
Well, again, it was out of my own necessity. Everything I do is very organic, because people are smart, you know, and I didn't want to be a celebrity, because I'd been asked my entire career, do you have a charity? Do you have a charity? Again, I don't just want to have a charity just for saying I have a charity. Like, it had to matter to me. And, you know, I was struggling mentally. My son his rose-colored glasses were coming off, and he was becoming a black man in America, and his father died when he was 9, and then 3 years later, my father passed away. So then what am I gonna do? How do I raise this young black man? And so we were struggling. And I realized that the help that we needed, culturally competent therapists, was hard to find. And because I'm a people person and I love us, I was like, well, I'm privileged. I can afford $350 a pop for me and my son to sit with a therapist. But then who is that therapist that he's gonna feel confident and telling his stuff that he's afraid to tell me? And we couldn't find it. You know, it's not even about the color of your skin. Are you culturally competent? Am I gonna have to come in here and explain to you my struggle as a black woman? Like, that's not gonna help me. And so I felt like, what about this whole generation, or this whole people that don't have it? Like, the hood that I grew up in, how do they find it? And so I felt inclined to do something about it. And that's how the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation was born, out of my own necessity, but also about how do I help more people? Because literally, we all have trauma. I don't care how much money doesn't save you from trauma. Money probably brings on more trauma. But, you know, because that's the idea. These kids on social media, they think just because you have money that somehow that fixes your problems. That's not true. So I just want people to heal. Like, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to isolate and that they're alone. Once I opened my mouth about my struggles, there was a relief, because hands went up and was like, oh my God, that's me too, that's me too. So, you know, I just know that the work we're doing, we're saving lives. And the thing that's disturbing the most is that death by suicide in ages 5 to 11 is increasing. And that bothers me. I can't sit idly by and do nothing.
Well, I'm so glad you're doing this, because you're a content creator as well. And we see so little in terms of mental health on screen. Less than 3% of all characters are shown with a mental health condition. Often it's focusing on addiction, but what about the full range?
Yeah.
And we know that that's a part of what the audience wants to hear about. Matter of fact, a study coming out of UCLA says that for young people, it's one of the top storylines that they want to focus on. We don't see black and brown people. We don't see the LGBTQ plus community in the context of mental health and talking about mental health, seeking therapy, seeking care, seeking treatment. So the fact that you're crossing over in both and that your characters have done this, I think that's really encouraging, because the entertainment industry is missing out again on what audiences want to see: authenticity, right? Real life and that real experience on the screen. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I will say, I mean, it is inspiring to listen to you talk, and it is truly inspiring to have both of you here on this stage, because we are kind of serving as the proof, all of that empirical evidence that we promised them for joining us today, that just underlines these experiences that we have and we talk about. So I will say, Taraji, thank you for constantly and always speaking your truth. Thank you for speaking your truth here today. We hope that we're going to get you out of here without getting too wet. But you are a force of nature. So thank you, Taraji. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you. We need humans need humans, y'all. It's that simple. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for weathering the storm.
Quite literally, weathering the storm with us.